So for a while I've been wanting to make a matching table to a table I did called the gear table. I still have that table, and I wanted to make another industrial sofa table to match that, to make a set. So I'm going to use these lathe legs. We're going to strip them down to bare metal using some evaporous safety erase and an angle grinder to start off. So before I start stripping these lathe legs, I actually want to take some of the cool little things off because I'm going to want to keep this in the final product. This was actually for the original lathe that was on here. This is a forward and a reverse function. So let's get this thing popped off and we can continue stripping the legs. So instead of stripping all the electronics out of this thing, because it looks like it works perfectly fine, and if you wanted to, you could probably pull this off and use it on another machine you might be restoring. I'll just clean up the outside steel on the outside plate and the top plate here, and I'll keep all the electronics intact just in case someone in the future wants to use this for restoration or one of their machines. So all I did here was put some foil tape over the badge because I don't want to rip any paint off the original plate. So for a paint stripper, we'll be using evaporous safe erase. I like this stuff because it doesn't burn your skin, you don't have to wear gloves, and it doesn't smell either. So you can see only after a few short minutes the evaporous is already starting to work, and this stuff just melts off. Alright, so now that the casting is mainly stripped down, we can let this dry a little bit and then we'll hit it with the wire wheel. After the wire wheel, we'll make sure to wipe this whole thing down with some acetone, get it nice and clean and ready for some clear coat. Okay, so now that we use the angle grinder to strip off all the rust in the paint, we can go a step further and start cleaning with acetone. Also, we can't forget about our switch box. So I wanted to make this sofa table out of rough sawn hard maple. However, I ran out of circle sawn and I have some band sawn left over, so I'll be using that as well. The colors match, so should be fine. Let's get to sizing this stuff up. So for the most part, that's all the circle sawn boards. I have this one band sawn board which has a pretty bad cup in it, but I'll rip that down the middle, joint the ends. I also have some of these old circle sawn pieces of maple. They're actually ambrosia, but we'll be using the rough side for this project. I think I will joint these together on end, make one long board, and all this should be enough for our top and bottom shelves. that you guys can hear me, I'm running the CNC today and I'm making some charcuterie boards in the background. But basically I'm just using biscuits here to help align these boards. Rough sawn and reclaimed boards. You gotta leave that character on there so you can't make them perfectly square and straight all the time. So you gotta work with them. They're really rough, they're warped, they're cupped, they're bowed. So to get them to where you want them, you gotta be rough back. And in that case, biscuits. I'm using those biscuits to essentially bend the boards into place and click and lock them where I want them. So let's continue that process for the top and then we'll get these two glued up. So once I finished scraping all the glue out of the table here, I went ahead and tuned up my hand plane and got to scraping. So basically what we're doing is we're exposing fresh wood at the high points of the rough sawn marks to pronounce that marking. It is still fairly rough right now, but we'll come back and we'll sand that just enough, and then we'll hit it with some clear coat, and that should smooth the whole table out so we don't get any splinters. Now that we hit those high spots, we can see, especially in the glare here, how we have fresh wood and the rough sawn wood. That really pronounces the character on this board, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Now that the edges of the table are trimmed up, we can start hitting it with sandpaper. Remember, we don't want to take off too much of the character because that's what we're trying to keep. I'm going to start off at 220. If it's a little too harsh, I'll switch over to 320. Do the same for the top and the bottom. Now that the top is sanded down and nice and smooth, there are still some splintery spots here and there. However, with our clear coat we're putting on here, it should cover those up and should be smooth as can be. For a clear coat, we're using Total Boat Halcyon Rugged Clear Gloss Varnish. We're doing a couple coats of gloss and then I'll do a coat of satin to finish it off. So we're going to go ahead and start mounting our castings to the table top and bottom shelf. For that I'll be using some lag screws. We have 2 holes in the front here, we have 1 hole in the back, 3 points of contact, should be pretty good. I'm just going to pre-drill these holes, sink these in, make sure the whole table's square, and then tighten them up. So as the table sits right now, everything's nice and square, so we can go ahead and button everything up. So here we have the gear table in all its glory. The gear table is comprised of 2 steel sprockets that are a 1/2 inch thick with a 17-inch diameter. Before assembling the table, I managed to weigh every single part. The gear table is approximately 130 pounds. And just guesstimating and weighing the two out by hand, I would think that the lathe leg table is about 150 plus pounds. Not over 200, but both very heavy and very well built tables. The finish on the lathe leg table came out a lot better compared to the gear table. However, they are still similar enough where I'm going to leave them alone. Total Boat's Halcyon water-based finish really made the color pop and really gave it a nice vibrant look compared to the finish that I used on the gear table. Total Boat, thank you for supporting me and thank you for making this project possible. If you guys want to get your own epoxies and finishes from Total Boat, feel free to use the link below and use code ROJAS Carpentry to save 15% off your first order. Thanks for watching and I hope to see you next time.